Let's talk about Paul Pierce. So y'all know him, former NBA champ, Finals MVP with the Boston Celtics, legend over there. The Truth got the nickname by Shaq, so it's legit. And he's retired now. He stayed close to the game after his retirement from the NBA, and he's always been involved with the sports media world in some kind of way. He started on ESPN, obviously. We know how that ended. He got fired after going live with having a great time. We can say it that way. And now he's a part of the Showtime sports team with All the Smoke, with Matt Barnes, Steven Jackson, KG35, obviously with Kevin Garnett, Ticket and Truth, so him and Kevin Garnett. And since yesterday, he brought out a new show on the network, which is called The Truth Lounge, Episode 1. And it appears to be just him, solo, chopping it up. He had one of his friends from back in the day that's a coach on the show as well. But, I think this is just going to be his show that he's running and leading. Good for Paul Pierce. I'll be tuning in. But he addressed a few topics in Episode 1. Obviously the wheelchair incident, the title favorites for this year, the Celtics, everything. But he started with a bomb, which was his reflection on his firing from ESPN. And he had some interesting stuff to get off his chest. So what we're going to do, we're going to play what Paul Pierce had to say. It's kind of a lengthy, it's like 2 minutes, but bear with me, and then we're going to come back and react to it. But before I play the clip, please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
I'm wrong, because I didn't think people saw it. Man, you did. You going viral. You was at the poker game, strippers. And by the way, they wasn't strippers. They was girls. It was the poker game. It was bikini night. And that wasn't a normal night. It was his birthday. So now I get a call from this lady. I don't even know her name. So she probably like the investigator or whatever her role is with ESPN, whatever. So tell me about what happened that night. And I'm like, you saw the tape. I was having a good time. I was with my friends. It was some dancing. It was some cards. It was a birthday. Y'all act like y'all don't be hanging out in places where stuff like this is going on. But at the same time, I was respectful. It wasn't like I was doing anything. I was sitting there, and there was some beautiful women there. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? You tell me. Nothing. So then I get the call the next day like, hey, Mr. Pierce, we're sorry to tell you that we're going to let you go. Disney has a morals clause. And I was just like, damn, I couldn't even really say nothing. All right, cool. But I was about to quit at the end of the year anyway. I was tired of putting on the coat and tie. I was tired of being held back on my opinions. And so it probably was the right timing of it all anyway. And so, I was disappointed on the way it went down. I didn't want it to go that way, but you know what I'm saying? Shit happened. I didn't do nothing illegal. And that's the story. I got fired for literally having a good time. And now we watch these shows. You got employees for ESPN and Fox who got their alternate shows. Now tell me where the morals and all of that. When they talking about women and strippers and drinking alcohol on the set and doing all this other stuff. Where the morals at now? Why it changed now? I don't get it. It was morals 2 years ago, but they no morals no more. Like, what's the deal with that? So I don't get, how, people gonna define what they say is morals and what's good and what's not. I'm on my free time. I can do what I want on my free time.
So there you have it. So first off, people, stay off IG Live, man. Stop going live. IG Live is and will always be undefeated. We got Ja Morant, Paul Pierce, all the rappers going on IG Live, and they end up in trouble. They end up losing jobs or even worse sometimes. So stop doing that. Stop going all that for no reason with no plan. We'll be good. Just drop us a reel, drop us a video that you can watch first before you upload it. That's the way to go about it. So let's talk about what Paul Pierce actually said, because I felt like he raised interesting points. He gave some context that we already heard before, but those 2 points that he had that I wanted to discuss were first. He said that he was tired of being held back for his opinions, which was interesting to me. And then he asked what happened to the morals, because the stuff that wasn't cool back in the days is not cool now. So we'll start to address the latter point, which is the moral part. He's clearly referring to Shannon Sharpe and Stephen A. Smith, right? because they're both having a blast on their podcast. Shannon is on Nightcap. I love the show, so this is absolutely not criticism. Don't get me wrong. But he's on Nightcap wilding out. He's talking about shaking the covers every time, shower sex, having Megan Thee Stallion stretched out like quarter three, or shorty stacked up like laundry, all that stuff. Like Shannon Sharp is doing that. Again, super entertaining. I love it. But yeah, this is not Disney, you know what I mean? And now he's affiliated, obviously. So why is that cool? Or you got Stephen A. Smith, who also has his own podcast under the ESPN umbrella, from what I understand. Although he owns it, he kind of had to ask permission to do it and all that stuff. He said that on the Joe Budden podcast. And Stephen A. Smith is talking about answering fans from questions who ask him about what's the best day of the week to be horny, about tasting women, what you want to do. Or the Jason Whitlock incident, for example, was just not Disney at all. No matter how you slice it. The way he came up and ethered the man for 50 minutes, he called him out of his name, all that stuff, that's just not Disney. And he kept on naming people that were once a part of the network themselves, and he brought them into the incident. So yeah, no, that just can't fly. In theory. So why did it? Why is ESPN letting both these guys get their stuff off? And Paul Pierce, one incident, they got rid of him. So 2 reasons, in my opinion. First off, although 2020 wasn't that long ago, times are drastically different now. Drastically different. What has changed? We know we are in some kind of PC society, so in theory, this would mean that ESPN would take no nonsense and kind of always think about the bottom line and be like, oh yeah, we don't want people cursing out on their shows, talking about sex. But no, the truth of the matter is that independent creators have become way more entertaining than regular TV personalities. It's a new show that's coming out every day. That's great. We have It Is What It Is. We have All the Smoke in Theory, although they kind of watered down now. We have, obviously, all the Shannon Sharp shows, the Draymond Green podcast, Paul George, but I can keep going. And he's kind of chipping away at ESPN views. So the only way for them to compete, and all of that stuff is free, by the way. Compared to ESPN, you still have to pay cable to get access to the content, right? So the only way for ESPN to stay afloat and to compete and not lose the throne is to associate themselves with the independent content creators. And we know all the stuff that comes with it. Independent content creators, they'll talk about whatever they want because obviously they are their own boss. They have no ceilings. If they wake up feeling and choosing violence, they want to call out everyone, curse everyone out, they can. You know, so this comes with it, and ESPN is aware of that. And if you look at the landscape, and if you look at the big dogs at ESPN right now, you have Shannon Sharp, so obviously we know about him. Pat McAfee had his own show, but he's now licensing it, so ESPN doesn't even own it. He's licensing it to ESPN. We have JJ Redick, who's probably the only outlier who has a podcast who's no nonsense whatsoever, is talking basketball only. And they used to have Ryan Clark. We might made a video on his exit from ESPN, but who also has his own podcast, talks about whatever he wants on the pivot. And even Stephen A. Smith now has his own podcast, so they understand the game. Back in 2020, it wasn't like that. ESPN was still king. People were tuning into ESPN to watch, and yeah, everybody was replaceable for the most part. Second point, why did they let that stuff fly and Paul Pierce had to go is let's be honest, Shannon Sharp and Stephen A. Smith at this point, they're just bigger than the network. They're bigger than the program, so they'll get away with way more stuff than Paul Pierce. Paul Pierce was good, in my opinion. Some of his takes were wild. The Klay Thompson one, I remember, kind of wild. Him coining the step back, all that stuff, that was kind of wild, right? But it was entertaining. But despite, no matter how you felt about Paul Pierce, it just isn't the draw that Shannon Sharp and Stephen A. Smith are, especially Shannon. So if you're under the network, then the network will replace you. And they did just that, and they're successful at it. So that's about Paul Pierce's first point about asking about the morals. Plus, I mean, it's a difference between Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharp just talking compared to Paul Pierce actually having the woman on camera. It's a difference. Like, I remember seeing that live. I was like, yo, Disney's just not going to like this. That was great. I loved it. But yeah, what happened is, I mean, it was predictable, right? And then before we get out of here, the second point that Paul Pierce raised that I wanted to touch on was about him saying that some of his opinions were held back on ESPN. I want to ask you guys, what, in your opinion, was Paul Pierce kind of blocked from talking or from giving an honest opinion upon? The most obvious answer would be LeBron James takes, I guess. But if you watch Truth and Ticket, for example, right now, him and KG give LeBron James praises a lot, like a lot lately. I'm a LeBron James fan, and I'm surprised. Sometimes I'm like, oh, why are they so positive? Why are they talking about LeBron so much? So it must not be LeBron James' take. So what is ESPN holding back? What was they holding back from Paul Pierce? And more importantly, what are they currently holding back right now? Like, do you think these guys are all up there lying pretty much? Like, I feel like that's an interesting point. I won't get too deep into it just because there's no way for me to get the information, but I just wanted to get that conversation started. So if you've made it this far, we can close the video right here. I appreciate you. First of all, please like the video, please subscribe to the channel, but let's get in that comment section and talk about that. What was Paul Pierce referring to when he said that ESPN was holding back their takes? And how do you look at the people currently up there on ESPN talking every day, knowing the fact that ESPN is holding people back from being honest? So these are my thoughts. It's been your boy, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.